Arizona Heritage Center. It's in Papago Park. You've probably never been there. Sorry. Sure. Oh, hi. Am I in there? Yeah. Hi. It's 85,000 square foot Smithsonian affiliate Arizona History Museum in Papago Park. It's not all cowboy stuff. We take on tough subjects. We have to keep that Smithsonian stamp on us. So please come through. I have passes for you in the back. I brought some Arizona maps and brochures about the museum. What else? Oh, and my card. So please come through, okay?
Thank you. All right, are we ready? All right, it is 11 and we have a dynamic panel today. So we are going to get going and do our best to make sure we get to audience questions. So if you are joining us remotely, thank you for joining us. Go ahead and put your questions as we go along in the chat. We will try to get to as many as possible. I will keep my introduction brief so we can give as much time to the panelists. My name is Chandra Crudup. I'm Associate Dean of Inclusive Design for Equity and Access in the Watts College, and I am proud to be the moderator of this particular panel, Community Knowledge and Memory Keepers. I am not native of Arizona, but I claim it. I moved here in 9th grade. So I've been around, and I have worked in the community with the Black theater troops for a few decades. I won't tell you how old because then it will give you my age, but for a few decades. And so I'm really excited to have this conversation. This panel, we're going to be talking about the labor and knowledge of community members is often overlooked in academia when understanding the impact and legacy of Black communities. This panel has 3 community experts, Bruce Nelson, Dr. Josephine Pete, and Darren Chapman, and they're going to share their work and memories as community memory keepers. We are going to start with each person introducing themselves briefly and then sharing a little bit about their work, and then we'll move on. And then at the end, we'll take questions for everybody. So write your questions down as we go along. Everybody ready? All right, first we have our first panelist, Bruce Nelson.
Okay, Bruce Nelson from Arizona. I am an independent filmmaker and curator. And ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. Keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up the freedom land. Have to do that because in Mesa, it is the 60-year anniversary of the East Valley NAACP this year. You need to clap for that. 60 years. 60 years they've been doing the work. Mr. Cleo Thompson was the first president. Miss Norma Washington was the secretary. You probably know her son, Bruce Cooper. He was on Channel 12. The sportscaster, that's her son. So I just want to acknowledge them to let us know. We're going to be celebrating them. And I'm putting the word out to those folks out there that have some money. Look me up because I want to do a documentary about them. So I know you got some dollars, so don't get out of here without giving me about $5,000, $10,000. And I want to make this documentary, okay? So the work that I do is about Washington Escobedo. I've been centering on that. And right now, my exhibit is called Matriarchs of Washington Park, the women who persevered through racism and misogyny in a segregated community. We always seem to forget about the Black women. We always talk about the men, but the Black women in my community, my neighborhood, my household, it was about my mom, about my grandma, my great aunt. They kept things in order. My aunt used to say all the time, I have an older sister, she said, you think you want to beat on her? Whatever you do to her, Uncle John's gonna do to you. So you raise your hand to her, you get your hand raised to you. That's the way it was. Everybody knew everybody in our neighborhood. Miss Vieira Johnson came from our neighborhood, the first African-American vice president, principal in Arizona. I remember on Sunday, like, Miss Johnson, I know I got homework, but it's Sunday. Can you just, I'm gonna get to it, okay? She'd see you, because she lived right next by. So I grew up in that community, and those are experiences I have. And it's very challenging to tell those stories because people don't want to tell those stories. It makes you uncomfortable. Get over it. I'm gonna stop there.
All right, thank you. All right, I'm gonna Next to Dr. Josephine Pete Nelson. Oh, Dr. Josephine Pete.
Good morning. I'm Josephine Pete. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the community in which I grew up in. I'm a former educator, retired now, and my community exists no longer. So I'll be talking to you about how it was back then. I am an ASU graduate, class of 1960. Our class is the reason you are now a university. We,
Oh, wow.
Dr. Josephine, check. Dr. Josephine kept that nice and short. You told me you had a whole bunch of stuff you was gonna read.
well, she said, introduce ourselves.
Oh, okay, all right.
You can keep going with your story though.
Okay, all right.
Come back.
Come back to it.
All right, we're gonna come back. Okay. All right. So my name is Darren Chapman. I am from Los Angeles, California. As a young guy, my parents moved to Phoenix, Arizona. I always tell the story that, you know, I was looking out the back of the Maverick. I don't know if you guys ever heard of a Maverick. It was called a Ford Maverick. And my mama somehow piled 4 kids in a Ford Maverick. And I had my face pressed up against the window and I was waving by to the hood, right? Because I knew we were going to be the next Beverly Hillbillies or something, right? And my mama touched down in South Phoenix. And I was like, it was like 50 degrees hotter. And I just went from one hood 500 miles to another hood. And I'm okay with that because there's some different things that have happened in my life. We'll talk a little bit more about that down the road here. But I'm so proud, and my beautiful brother Bruce was singing that hymnal. I'm so proud of our deep ancestry as it relates to archiving that history. That history is multitudinous, has so much depth. I come from slavery. I'm a descendant of that. I come from transatlantic trade, for goodness sake, trade as it relates to a human being. I am from there to here working in my community and workforce development. And I'm so proud of that and other different, more positive narratives. So I'm super appreciative to be here with you guys today as Dr. Pete just duped me into talking a little bit sooner than I had anticipated. But that's what I love about my sisters, man. You just never know, man. And you got to be all right with it because they beautiful, right? As Bruce told y'all, man, they're beautiful. So thank you guys. I appreciate being here and look forward to this conversation.
All right, so you see, we have a dynamic panel. Okay. That'd be just be easier if I do this. All right, so presentation time. We're gonna go back to you, Dr. Pete, and you go ahead and tell your story.
Okay, slide 1.
Slide 1.
Okemah community.
In the microphone.
Okay. Okemah community. Okemah community, next slide, was a part of the Bartlett Herd Ranch. If you look in the far northeast corner, right there, the little block, this was a part of the Bartlett Herd Ranch. The Herd Ranch was approximately 6,070 acres. That little section is about 160 acres. This community was formed in the early 1900s, African Americans pursuing their dreams. Many of them were unskilled laborers, and they came looking for a better way of life and to escape Southern persecution. This land was subdivided, and African Americans were able to purchase acreage. They bought the land, built their homes. Next slide, please. This is one of the first homes that was built in Okemah that had modern facilities. This home belonged to the family of N.G. Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell lived to be the longest living African-American who survived the Pearl Harbor bombing. My family like the Mitchells, moved to Okemah in the early 1940s. We purchased 2 acres, built our home, and like our neighbors, we enjoyed a large garden. We had poultry, we had hogs, we had a cow and a goat, which I milked each morning before I went to school. We also had a large dog. He followed me around everywhere I went. Next slide. Okay, typical street in Okemah, where we grew up. Living in Okemah meant living in a school that was designed to accommodate the separated races. I have to tell you, there was no running water, no electricity, no telephones, no television. And as you can see, no paved streets. You know, we didn't know we were poor. We were healthy, we were happy, we were free to roam our community, we had our culture, and we had our heritage. But the adults knew. And so what they did, they sacrificed to provide for us experiences that they knew young people in other communities were enjoying. That, in a sense, made Okemah unique, because what they did, they provided a little open air theater where we could go and watch black and white movies. We had mom and pop cafes. We could go and dance to jukebox music, socialize with our friends, dine on hamburgers, French fries, have a soda or ice cream. We also had in our community an ice house. As I said, we had no electricity, so we had ice boxes. The ice box was there to keep your food cold. We had a number of mom and pop grocery stores. Barbershops were in homes, so were beauty shops. Next slide. This is the modern day Willow Grove Baptist Church. The church was our center. We had no parks back then, so we would gather at the churchyard or the schoolyard. We went to church for spiritual guidance and socialization. We dressed in our finest, went early in the morning. We were happy to stay all day. We rehearsed plays. We studied our Bibles. We enjoyed potluck dinners prepared by the adults. The young people were the focus of the church programs. What we did, we learned our parts by memory, and we had exchange programs with other churches. There was an African-American church in Chandler, there was one in Mesa, and there were several in Phoenix. Next slide. This is a baptism. We were so happy. It was a major event. When someone decided to accept our faith, they had to be fully immersed in water. And here I have to tell you a little bit about the water. Now, some communities and some cities are so proud to have rivers, lakes, ponds in their communities. We were proud to have the San Francisco Canal. It ran right through our community. And this is the baptism. So the canal was an asset to our community. It served as a baptism for the church. It served as a swimming pool for us in the summer. And it also provided fresh fish for Friday night fish fries. Next slide. This is our school. Education, education, education. Education was the key. This is the 40th Street Schools, so named because of its location. In the mornings, we gathered in the circle, we said the pledge, we sang the national anthem, and then we stood proud and we sang the Negro national anthem, lift every voice and sing, all 3 verses. This school was attended by grades 1 through 8. All teachers, all students were African-American. We say our teachers were DDD. They were devoted, dedicated, and determined that we would learn. And this learning was enforced by the paddle. Many of our teachers lived in nearby neighborhoods. They knew our parents, they knew our culture. Some of them attended our church. We were encouraged to be proud of who we were, where we came from. We were told that we were bright. Our skin color, gender had nothing to do with our brains. Education was seen as a way up and out. I don't know who said it, but someone said education is the key. And without it, you'll continue to be disenfranchised and left out of the mainstream of society. In other words, you'll be at the table or you'll be on the menu. Speaking of menu, our school had no cafeteria. The hot lunches were prepared at the other school and they were brought to our school. Many of our students brought their lunches from home. Next slide. Oh, this is our playground. Oh, tremendous opportunities here. Open spaces, no trees, no grass, very little playground equipment. We jumped rope, played hopscotch. Rope was double dutch. Oh boy. We had one basketball goal, as you can see. It looks like it was wooden, homemade, probably. The larger boys played there. The girls usually played ring games, dodgeball. We had to be very creative. Then came the inevitable change. In the early 40s, surrounding areas began to develop. New houses were built and people began to move out. Zoning changed and Okemah became an industrial area and was no longer recognized as residential. As a descendant of Okemah, we have formed a foundation and our purpose is to preserve the history of Okemah, a community where there are no cornerstones, no monuments, no landmarks that are left to showcase the history of this community and its people. We have a website, www.okemahcommunity.com. We host one fundraiser a year. The proceeds go for scholarship for a high school senior who is a descendant of Okemah. In 2018, it was October 20th, the governor and the mayor of the city of Phoenix proclaimed October as Okemah Remembrance Month. We have a motto, Okemah gone but not forgotten. Thank you.
Dr. Pete, can you say that website one more time so everybody has an opportunity
Yes,
to write that down?
It's www.okemahcommunity.com.
www.okemahcommunity.com. So I just want to make sure everybody got that. So thank you. Can you repeat the scholarship information?
The scholarship information. The scholarship money goes to a senior who is a descendant of Okemah, and we give one a year. We have one that we're going to give this year. We hope to give one every year.
Is there information about that on the website?
There should be
Okay.
information on the website.
All
We
right.
also have a book that's published, detailed history of the Okemah community, compiled by Bobby Burke, who was his grandfather, was a resident of Okemah, and I wrote the preface to this book.
All right. So there's more information there. Thank you for sharing your story. Darren.
Yes. Should I do the clicker?
Make sure you move your mic.
Should I do the clicker? Or is it a mobile clicker or just
Yeah,
have you
clicker.
change the slide? Oh, you have a video? If you want, you can just zoom through the video.
I remember those early years, grandmother's garden. All the neighbors would come by and get fresh fruit and vegetables. In those early days, it didn't seem to matter. Gangsters, men, women, kids would appear. It was like a safe haven where people could come and vent about disciplining kids, money problems, neighborhood politics, down-home cooking recipes. That garden was the greatest icebreaker in the world. On the other side of the fence, the sewer boys, the local gang would meet. Man, they were cool. To become a sewer boy meant you were going to live and die in the hood. Sitting on that fence was tough. As a youngster, I always wondered what side I'd land on. So many people told us we wouldn't make it. They'd say, "You're gonna end up dead or in jail." Our communities were falling apart, and the city, the politicians, paid no attention. We were tearing up our own neighborhoods. We cared less about ourselves, and the sense of togetherness began to disappear. 20 years later, the areas that used to be the killing fields are now growing tomatoes, job skills, strawberries, cross-cultural conversations, onions, trust, and new ideas. When I first met with the sewer boys about the garden, they feigned interest. Behind my back, they thought the idea actually stunk. We began with a small patch called the beloved community garden, clearing broken beer bottles and syringes out of the soil.
Go to my website.
After 9 months, we started the Dare to Drink
You
Garden.
could just Google it.
Our newest project is called the Garden of Tomorrow. What a blessing to see people of all races, religions, and affiliations coming together for a common goal. Healthy, nutritious living. Putting aside their differences in exchange for community. Oh, and some really good greens.
Nice.
I'd like to pray. Thank you very much.
That's it. No, I'm kidding you. See, I just put that on. So this is as Dr. Pete is talking about with Okemah and the San Francisco Canal. This is an amazing story of there to hear. Here we are all these years later, and that San Francisco Canal actually yields water to one of our projects called the People's Garden. We use these old grandfathered in thoroughfares that originally started from some of the Pima and other different indigenous folks. Before Salt River Project had those thoroughfares, they were thoroughfares that were released from the mountains, and other thoroughfares where you could actually bring your water into your land and cultivate that land. That picture in the beginning of my grandmother is an incredible story from there to here. She is the 25th kid of a slave given the name Henry Watson. Henry Watson. Henry Watson was a breeder slave, and 22 of his kids were actually sired, literally sired. The last three, and the last one was my grandmother, 25th. Those three were born into what was at the end of slavery called homesteading. And so, as Dr. Pete talked about the Okemah neighborhood, we extrapolated through the Trail of Tears into Texas and into other places. In the 1940s, my grandparents landed in Los Angeles, California. They saw really great opportunity. My grandmother started this business where she would be doing house cleaning. And it would, although as an entrepreneur, that was really exciting for her. My grandfather said, man, I'm going to do a service industry and I'm going to drive very wealthy people around. And so he was in the chauffeur business, right? And they just were so proud of themselves. They knew that they were moving and transcending some of the different things that have held us back before. And I am now that descendant, and I just want to give all thanks and praise to. Yeah, no, I know. So I gotta give all thanks and praise to those griots, to those incredible folks that came before me. My grandmother is here now as a part of me in spirit, making sure that she is that angelic figure that always gave me this incredible spirit to be a blessing to my community through all of those issues, through all of the predicament. Here we are, San Francisco Canal, right? That actually baptized folks back in the day and gave you some really good fish, right? It is now providing fruits and veggies for our community and changing the narrative of our community. Yeah, we had all of the, you saw the acting with the sewer boys. They kind of feigned like they thought it was stuck. So I was like, okay, all you guys hold your noses because you think this ideal stinks. And they were like, we'll get with Bruce, man, so we can kind of work on our direction in the future. All right. But again, what an incredible piece. And I'll end with this. Tiger Mountain Foundation, which is the nonprofit organization that was born from the Okemahs and from the beautiful people that came before us and wanted to see a better world, especially for these young Black men and women, man, that would actually take the mantle and get the baton passed to them, right? And not necessarily want to see blood versus crip and vitriol happening within our people, but somehow, how do we empower our folks? And so the best thing that ever happened to me in my life was this Tiger Mountain Foundation. I see a lot of the different faces in this group, and Tiger Mountain Foundation has that diversity. I am so happy with the inclusion that we have folks coming from homelessness, folks coming from reentry. And like I said, I'll end with this. It's the most incredible from there to here story that is not over with yet, right? We are here. We're doing our best to actually keep bringing this incredible story that was started by the Dr. Pete's and passed on to us. And it's a beautiful story. So if you get an opportunity, come visit a Tiger Mountain Foundation. What I would love to see is some of you educators, some of you mentors, as we build our capacity. We've gone from a six-figure organization right off the bat, understanding how our produce can be going to farmers markets and to restaurants, and to our folks in our community having a better narrative around how healthy eating could be part of active lifestyles and workforce development, right? And personal development. But I would love to see some of you incredible people come in and offer a hand in our growth. We're 7 figures now, and that's worth billions, if not even trillions, as you transpose those numbers for what that's really worth. Quite frankly, it's priceless. So appreciate you guys for being here and having a listen to what we have going on. Thank you.
Darren, how do they find out more about
Let's try this again. Darren, how do they find out more information about Tiger Mountain Foundation?
Well, I will give you guys a website, but that will be cheating a little bit, man. I want y'all to come on down. We have community gardens literally 7 days a week, whether it's volunteering at the farmers market. We have multiple office sites. So we're part of the Nina Mason Pulliam Audubon Center management now. We have a site here in Tempe at the Max 6 co-working space. where we can bring a lot of our other young entrepreneur businesses, right? Maturating businesses into these conversations. So what I want to do is invite you guys to come on down, see what we got going on. Go to that site, www.tigermountainfoundation.org, and there's a multitude of different growth happening within Tiger Mountain Foundation as it relates to this more positive, bigger story.
Okay, so I heard two things. He said, Google it and do something. So don't just Google it, right? There's that. And then the other thing I loved about your story is you talked about the story is not over. And that's, if you all don't take anything else from this panel, I hope you all are hearing the past to the present to the future. And part of this archiving work is not just a story that is done. It is a story that's ongoing. I'm going to hand it back over to Bruce because he really does have more to share with y'all. He cut himself short. So I'm going to go give him a little more time and then make sure you have your questions ready so we can jump right into them. Okay.
Okay. So they're going to pull up my website and you can watch one of the trailers. Go ahead. Northtown. So there's my website. You can find all the documentaries and exhibits. So take a look at this real quick.
I call it the spinning wheel of death.
So about the documentary. So I shot for one day and I was hoping to get maybe a 10-minute documentary. We ended up getting 69 minutes. And we got into about 15 different festivals. And this summer, we're going to Toronto to show it again. Production, yeah. Northtown. There you go. Trailer right there.
Place to go to the store.
Ain't gonna let nobody burn me round, burn me round, burn me down. Ain't gonna let nobody burn me round. Keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up the freedom land. During the early 1890s to the late 1960s, Jamaica had a thriving pop production. African Americans and Latinos were right in the heart of the game, pushing the way. The Escobedo public housing project
project opened around 1943. It was made to the attempt to distinguish slum housing in the area. It was originally built for African American Latinos. However, it was first occupied by the Black group of World War II, who were not allowed to live on the barracks on William Field Airport Base. Okay, so that documentary, like I said, we shot for one day, and we walked through the neighborhood asking people, could we interview them? And I used to be the paper boy in the neighborhood, so everybody knew me. And I remember going to a lady named Miss Anke's house. She was a friend of my mom's, and she had curlers in her hair. And she's like, come on in, baby, you know, and it's okay, Miss Anke, we want to talk to you about the neighborhood. And it was hard to get her to keep seated. She to get up. We got some chicken in the oven. We just want to talk to you. Every time we sit down, she'd get up. We got some greens. If y'all would, she just wanted to feed everybody. Just that's how it was. Whereas other people, old man Brown, as we called him, went to his house. He ran me off. He said, I'm not talking to you. I said, Mr. Brown, I know you. I know your grandmother. I know you know my grandmother. That's why I'm here. I want to hear your story. But we finally got people in, and it ended up being 69 minutes. And it is on Amazon, but I'm fighting with them. So we may end up pulling it down. So we'll see what happens.
All right, you have your questions ready? Do we have any from those joining us remotely? Not yet. Okay. Any in the audience? Yes, we do. Okay. I'll do it. I'll run.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Harris-Lang. I had a question for Dr. Pete. When they switched the zoning to industrial, did they give any type of compensation to the homeowners? What happened there?
Great question.
Oh, yes. What happened?
It is.
What happened? There was a zoning change and people were able to sell their land. They sold their land, moved to more modern communities just west of Okemah, around 24th Street. I think what started it was the airport started to expand, buy out properties. So people started to move to South Phoenix. So there was African-American realtors, construction companies. They built a community right at the intersection there, 24th Street and Broadway, west to about 16th Street. Basically all African-American, modern conveniences. So people sold their land and moved to better housing, definitely. When the freeway came, also, we were able to sell our land. My mother stayed until 1973. She was one of the last ones to leave. She was secure there, but finally we convinced her to sell out and move out. Ultimately, commercial businesses took over most of the homes. Some of them are still there, but they're used for commercial business. The school is still there. The church is still there, but there are other businesses there occupying those buildings. So yes, they were compensated. They didn't just take it. We were able to sell it. Thank you.
Great question. Do we have one online yet? Not yet. All right. Anybody in the room? Other questions? Always worthy of the mic so the people joining remotely can hear.
I just wanted to know if you're pulling your documentary from Amazon, is there another way that we'd be able to view it?
Yeah, I'm looking at another distributor right now. We'll be licensing it to the library here at ASU for the teachers and that stuff. We're still negotiating that right now, but I am looking at it, get another platform. Amazon is not really kind to independent filmmakers, so it makes it kind of tough.
That is an important question.
But I'm available to come and show it. Just give me a call and we'll work out a deal.
Other questions? I have questions if you don't. All right.
I was just going to ask, I think Okemah was not far from some Asian communities in downtown Phoenix. Do you remember them being nearby, especially Asian grocers and things like that in the neighborhood or nearby?
Oh, yes. Jimmy's grocery store. right across from the school. At 40th Street and Broadway, there was an Asian grocery store, a larger one. Yes. We also had several mom and pop grocery stores in the immediate community, but mainly, I'm trying to think, was there a large grocery store? There wasn't, but the 40th Street one was about the largest grocery store. Yes.
Hi. Hello, testing. So, I know all y'all.
Yes, you do.
And I love you.
Back at you.
I'm sorry, my name's Todd Bailey. Again, you saw me before, possibly. Todd Bailey, Arizona Historical Society. When I hear you speaking, I think of my family. We're from the neighborhood, Northtown. And I think about my family, there's two camps. There are the people that were like, I got to get out of Arizona. I got to get out of Arizona. You know, it's racist there. It's not this. And then there's the people that are like, it really worked out here. And I love Arizona for the same reasons people move here and stay here. I guess my question is, how do we engage those people that really love Arizona to come and share their history with us? You know, what's the value in it over time? Do we love Arizona? Are we a part of this community? Do we identify as a part of this community?
I think we love Arizona. Many of us are here, and people will tell you we were headed for California, but we ran out of gas. We actually came to Arizona. Growing up, many of our friends received the motivational message, go west, young men. Many of our classmates, our contemporaries, moved to California. We stayed. We raised our family here. Arizona has been good to us. We're happy we stayed. We've seen lots of progress and growth just on this campus alone. I almost got lost. When I was here, the library was on the west side of the campus. There are many, many changes in Arizona, and I have to say for the better. And I attribute that to your current leadership at this university, the current leadership in the city of Phoenix and Tempe. Tempe has a Black mayor. Scottsdale has a Hispanic mayor. It's awesome. It's awesome, the progress that we are making. So we have to stay here. And I was once told that if you love your job, and this is our job, to make positive changes by inclusion of everybody. But if you love your job, you never work a day in your life. And that has been my legacy. I love what I do. I enjoy it. And one of these days, after being officially retired for 20 years, I'm going to retire again. So I like sharing these messages with you young people, because you have to step up. You have to continue the positive interaction. You have opportunities that we did not have. We were segregated, isolated, and you are not. You are here to interact with each other. Make the best of your opportunities and go forth and be wonderful. You can do it.
Thank you. Darren, Bruce, do you have responses to Todd's question?
Mine is just, thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, can you guys hear me okay? Mine is similar. No matter where you go, you guys heard that saying, there you are. There you are. So make the best of where you are. I've moved back to Los Angeles thinking, man, those fields and grass will be much greener on that other side. And I was trying to do something as a young man, very emphatic, very radical as far as changing my life. And I had to go through something very tough. And so I figured I could do that homeless in Los Angeles just as good as anywhere in the world. And then as I maturated, I came back ultimately to Phoenix By that time, I had gotten to some real estate and started doing some things. And the real estate market was better for me here because I could be now somewhat of an entrepreneur and think in terms of proprietorship as I started to, again, to maturate a bit more. But no matter where I was, there I was, right? And so at the end of the day, I just kept trying to make the best of those situations. I'm right here in Arizona, whether you are in Harlem, whether you are in Miami, whether you are in Los Angeles or Phoenix, you get a lot of the very same thing. You get this dichotomy, this broken up of the haves and the have-nots, right? You do your dang thing. And you're here in Arizona, man, make this your home and make it the best of what you can.
Yeah, so I'll respond, put it in perspective. Like I lived in Mesa, but I had aunts in Okemah, so I was in Okemah all the time. When she says that we had a Hispanic mayor in Scottsdale, you have to remember Scottsdale was a sundown town, and so was Tempe. And so now to elevate someone to that position is pretty amazing. I grew up in the 50s and 60s. I went to segregated Booker T. Washington School. We had a canal where we swam until we could get into the pool later. But to answer your question, I tell folks, you got to get engaged. You got to go to the museums. You got to get out and get involved in stuff. And if you don't see representation, you have to ask. And when you do see something that's on display about African Americans, you need to show up. Because the more you show up, the more they will bring us to those spaces. I have an exhibit opening June the 1st for Juneteenth called Hallelujah Hats, celebrating the churches of the women from Washington Park through their fashion with purses, gloves, shoes, and of course, hats. So every time you see something Black, you got to show up. You don't have to be Black to go and see it and appreciate it. Just show up. If you do that, that will want to keep you here in Arizona and we'll have more opportunities. But people just complain, you got to show up. You know, just got to show up.
Thank you for your responses. I hope you all were taking notes.
Okay, so this is from Nix Mendy, who's online. It says, in contrast, I think it's important to think of those who may have or have had conflicting relationships with Arizona. How can we engage with those stories of suffering or erasure to understand how we can build better, diverse, positive communities in the future?
I'm a take a stab at that because I'm like the most politically correct person here. Todd's laughing because he's like, no, he ain't. So I'm gonna keep it 100. Jessica's going, oh damn. I just when I thought we was almost through this session, man, unscathed. Look, this state is a cold piece of work. I mean, as far as Martin Luther King really actually should be considered not only to be a holiday, but you know, this is as we look at some of the different leaders in our world, and if you really are inclusive, then that man, not that Black man, but that man did something for civility that not many human beings have done for human beings, as it relates to women's rights, as it relates to Hispanic rights, as it relates to human beings getting a effing grip on how you get along with one another, for goodness sakes, without me necessarily having to kill you for it. I'm just basically saying, man, as a human being, respect me. So that says a lot when a state gets together and says, maybe it might be work, right? I see that, and I know that that's where I am. And so therefore, my challenge is great, and it stays great. It stays that way as it relates to justice systems here in Arizona, right? As I get pulled over in certain particular places, and you know, that's that DWB, driving while Black, right? I get it. It's not easy. However, this is our challenge, man. Grow up, man. This is it, right? If I run from it again, one thing I figured out as I ran as far as I possibly could, again, there I was. And at some point in time, I thought to myself, I'm gonna come back in, and I had some maturing to do. So I do get it. Sometimes we need to maybe take a step back in a base before we can abound, right? And this is what we have. This is it. So therefore, man, when you get that opportunity and that clarity, man, face that music and dive in. You know what it is. And as my man Bruce says, tackle it, right? Tackle it. Go after it with both fists, both feet. 10 toes down, baby.
I think that is why knowing your history is so important. Just as he has said, we're not where we used to be, but we're not where we ought to be. That's why, as young people, your involvement, your perspective is so important. As far as those of us who have lived those kinds of lives, I've always tried to be very positive, opened, because there are good people of all colors. And I think we need to pick our role models and our mentors based on character and not color. Because there are people who are your color that are not your kind. And you want to be the finest that you can be. Frederick Douglass once said that those who forget their history are destined to repeat it. And we can talk about the good old days all we choose, but I don't want to go back there. I would prefer to look to a brighter, better future and leave it in your capable hands, because the challenge is yours. This world is yours. And what you make of it, you're going to pass on to your children. So, as he said, step up. I admire people who sit around and say there's nothing to do. There's plenty to be done. Just do it.
All right, with that, I think we need to give our panel a round of applause. I know we had a few other questions in the room and maybe online, but we are at time and we have a jam-packed schedule today. So thank you again for sharing your stories. If you did not get any of the information they shared about how to get in touch with their work and find out more, let us know. We can get you that information, and I'll turn it back over to Jessica.
Thank you, everyone. We're going to go ahead and set up for our keynote. And then I want to make a quick announcement about lunch. This is a lot more people than we anticipated, honestly.